is 2021893858. To begin with, we are given an assignment of factors influence supply for houses in Malaysia. So, what is supply? Supply is the total quantity of a certain good or service that a supplier makes available to customer of a specific time and price. Typically, market activity determine it. For instance, increased demand can prompt a supplier to boost their supply. For the worldwide housing market, house prices mainly escaped the pandemic ravage last year, even though most economic indicators showed decline. In Malaysia, with a total of 36,863 units, costing REM155.6 billion, the national residential block lot increased by 24.7% in 2021. Up to 20.5%. However, housing market across the world have been rising since COVID-19 pandemic outbreaks. The pandemic has given a phenomenon new life. Lastly, a real estate bubble, sometimes known as a housing bubble, happens when house prices climb quickly due to rising demand and shortage of available homes and irrational buying. Speculators enter the markets when they see that house prices are rising, further increasing demand.
Hi, my name is Fatin Dama binti Isham Budinsha, and my student ID number is 2021 205922. In this group video, I'm going to talk about one of the factors that influence supply for houses in Malaysia, which is price of housing. Okay, first and foremost, law of supply indicates quantity supplied at a specified price. The supply-price relationship is positive. This means that pricing affects supply. Each additional unit frequently increases the seller's opportunity cost. The higher selling price justifies the higher opportunity cost of each extra unit sold, leading to increased supply from the producers. As we can see here in data, there are several types of houses available in Malaysia, including terrace house, high-rise residential properties, semi-detached house, and detached house. The data above compares the average price of houses built in 2010 to 2020 using the Malaysian House Price Index, which is MPHI for the short form, and the total units provided by house type. For terrace house, the average price was 188,207 ringgit, and by 2020, the average price was 395,923 ringgit, up 207,760 ringgit. Terrace house have 436,597 units, which is the most of any house type. In 2010, the average price for high-rise residential properties was 173,713 ringgit, while the average price in 2020 was 304,888 ringgit, a difference of 131,175 ringgit. According to the data, the price of high-rise residential property in 2020 was the lowest of all types of residences. There were 183,932 units supplied for high-rise residential properties. Semi-detached residential dwellings have the highest price in 2020 at 660,855 ringgit compared to 378,294 ringgit in 2010. Semi-detached house has the lowest supply with 49,976 units. The price differences for detached houses between 2010 and 2020 was 277,191 ringgit, the second biggest increase after semi-detached homes. In 2020, the average detached property cost 658,703 ringgit compared to 381,512 ringgit in 2010. detached house have the second lowest unit supply besides terrace and high-rise property, which are at 65,134 units. In brief, even if high-rise residential properties are at the lowest average price, producers continue to supply terrace house. This is because according to the supply rule, as price rise, so the supply. A terrace house actually is cheaper than a semi-detached or detached house and also has extra perks, like in general, it has large living area that is not available in high-rise property. As a result, terrace houses are substantially more popular than other types of houses, and therefore more terrace houses are supplied by producers. Semi-detached and detached houses are in low supply compared to terrace and high-rise residences, but are the most costly. This means that even when price increase, it does not ensure that suppliers will continue to supply this type of housing because other variables such as increased cost reducing demand might also affect the quantity of supply.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Aina Insyirah binti Roslan, student ID 2021492798, and I will be talking about the factor price of resources. So, for this video presentation, I will only be explaining 3 building materials, which is the aggregates, the timber and the paints. The first building material is the aggregates. Based on the performance review indices for February 2022 that were published on the Department of Statistics Malaysia's official website, the price of aggregates have been increasing at 0.1% in Johor, while in Selangor, Wilayah Persekutuan, Kuala Lumpur, Melaka and Negeri Sembilan, the price of aggregates has been increased by 0.8%. As you can see, there will be different prices for different types of aggregates. For example, crusher run will cost you 26 ringgit Malaysia per ton. The second building material is timber. So based on the February 2022 performance review indices, Cebu has experienced a 3.7% increase in price of timber and 1.6% increase in price has been occurred in all Peninsula Malaysia, while Kota Kinabalu experienced 0.3% increase in price of timber. For tunnelized soft timber, it will cost 1,246 ringgit and 15 cent per meter cube, and wrought timber for formwork will cost 1,615 ringgit and 38 cent per meter cube. And the last building material that I will explain here is the paint. Cebu has experienced the most increase in price, which is 1.5% in price of paint, while Selangor, Wilayah Persekutuan, Kuala Lumpur, Melaka and Negeri Sembilan, also Terengganu and Kelantan, have experienced a 0.8% increase in price of paint. Sandakan has experienced 0.6% increase in price of paint. So like every other building materials, paints have different prices based on each type of paint. So for emulsion paint, wall sealer for 20 liters will cost 136 ringgit and 50 cents per drum. For emulsion paint, Weatherbond 20 liters will only cost you 127 ringgit per drum. But for emulsion paint, Matex Pro 18 liters will cost 49 ringgit and 50 cents per drum. So here I will be explaining on how the increase in price of building materials will affect the supply of housing in Malaysia. So I will be taking one example of house, which is the detached house. So the total average price for detached house in Cebu back in 2019 was 240,000 ringgit, while in 2020 it was increased to 265,000 ringgit. Meanwhile, in Selangor, the prices of a detached house back in 2019 was 597,500 ringgit, while in 2020 it has increased a lot to 715,000 ringgit. So here we can see the increase in price of building materials has affected the price of the houses itself. we can say that the cost of building materials increase. The price of houses in Malaysia will also increase. Therefore, it will affect the supply of housing in Malaysia. That is all from me. Moving on to another factor that will be presented by another group member.
Hi, my name is Muhammad Faizikwan bin Muhammad Arfa, and my matric number is 2021855122. And now I will explain about technology used in house, which is one of the factors influencing supply for houses in Malaysia. So technology used is Industrialized Building System, or also known as IBS. Based on CIDB, which is Construction Industry Development Board in Malaysia, IBS can be defined or means as construction technique which manufacture the components in controlled environment. And when IBS is used in Malaysia, it can shorten the period of housing construction due to the machinery that is more advanced, and also it can speed up the process of construction in housing. It also promotes sustainability that is involved of innovation as well as the adoption of modern construction methods since it's centrally merchandised. Sustainability can be achieved through the reduction of wastage in factory production and increase the safety at the site and factory to a human. Based on the diagram below, it is the set of category IBS that consists of precast, reusable formwork, steel framing, innovative blockwork, and timber framing system. And then based on the data from CIDB, we found out there are two that we take as comparison, that is the highest and the lowest in supplier and manufacturer of material housing construction, which is in the data, it was recorded that Selangor was the most supplier in IBS category with total of 101, while Perlis is the lowest with total of 1 only. So the next data we got, we still take Selangor and Perlis to make the comparison, and the number of IBS contractor is still the highest was recorded by the Selangor, which is the 1,582, while the lowest is still Perlis with 1,070 only. So it is mean when the Selangor is the highest in supplier and in manufacturer of material construction, and also influence the number of IBS contractor, which is also be increased. And for the Perlis, it will be the opposite. And so, to sum it up, the supply for houses at Selangor will increase more than Perlis due to amount of the material and contractor.
Importance of having houses in Malaysia. In Malaysia, all people have a need for housing. Owning a home offers freedom, security, and privacy, but most of all, it is a location that gives us a catering, a place that we live each morning and return to each evening. Malaysia is a lucky country. The fact that our economy is growing and that social equality is widely embraced provides a solid basis for this journey. Although having a home is a goal that Malaysians can achieve, but for some it may be more difficult than for others. There are numerous advantages of owning a house that make it all worthwhile. The first good reason is that you will build equity. It expands when your house market worth rises. Furthermore, you will have living security. This is because renting put your family's stability at the whim of a landlord who can at any time decide they do not want to rent out their property anymore. Next, by owning a house, you can also create your own dream house. Typically, landlords do not appreciate renters making improvement. If you own your house, you have unlimited creative freedoms to renovate your house. Moreover, you have more control over cost to your own house. You do not have to worry about the cost of rent anymore. Lastly, by owning a house, your mortgage repayments can be a way of saving money. Paying off your mortgage is a method of saving money as all your payments include principal and interest.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Aiman bin Zakaria, and in this video I will explain about the policy. The policy were introduced to make sure the national economy is safe, balanced and under control. In perspective of housing sector, the policy made by government is to ensuring access to quality and affordable housing to meet the need of a growing population by matching the demand and supply, promoting an efficient and sustainable housing industry, as well as providing efficient public utilities and service, and a clean environment. By making the objective achieved, the government helped the developer to supply house by giving them a subsidy and cut their tax. Policy is commonly used in Malaysia is monetary policy and fiscal policy. Monetary policy is a policy undertaken by the government to achieve a sustainable economic growth and attain price stability. Monetary policy influence housing price and supply through the level of interest rate. Lastly, if government ignore the housing market and not doing a monetary policy, development for the market will increase abruptly. Next is fiscal policy. Fiscal policy is a policy that related to tax and expenditure. In fiscal policy, government commonly cut developer tax to make sure they can produce many houses with below market price. They also giving them a subsidy to the developer to help them produce more houses to fit population. For example, in August 12, 2018, our government made a decision to not impose the sale and service tax SST on construction service and building material. And in 30 September 2021, Malaysian Government Lembaga Pembangunan Industri Pembinaan Malaysia CIDB monitor the price of building material to avoid rising in price. Next, I will talk about the scheme that held under fiscal policy. First is My Home Scheme, and the main aim of the scheme is to deliver affordable low-cost housing for the first-time buyer in Malaysia. It also to ensuring financial return for developer. Second is Prima Scheme. Prima Scheme is an affordable housing project under Prima Act 2012. The purpose of Prima is to planning, develop, build and maintain the high-quality house in city for middle-class income group. The developer for the Prima housing will get the subsidy, and it is an advantage to them to supply more and more.
So now, for the last part, which is conclusion, to sum it up or to be concluded, there are myriad of factors that can influence the supply for houses, such as price of houses, price of resource, and technology used in house supply. Supply for houses is an important matter need to be considered by the government. It is clearly and obviously important because it's proof that policy of housing was introduced by the government, which it can help the people with low income have access to adequate and decent shelter for life. And also, there is the National Housing Policy, which is so important for housing in Malaysia, because the government could not provide the direction and basis for any planning and development of housing in Malaysia without this policy. And also, they have monetary and fiscal policy, which is also important since government can achieve sustainable growth and influence the economy in Malaysia with this policy. And the last one, some suggestion for the government should consider, which is the government should increase the supply at certain area, which is area that has prices of houses that are too high due to shortage of supply. And also the government can give subsidy to people with low income household by giving the income tax credit, propose the universal basic income and help the poor family to pay for the housing.